because who knew what life brought up? And I really did think that way even in high school. Like, I'm going to be kind to this guy, one, because everybody deserves kindness, but that guy might be my boss one day. But I wanted to have as many connections as I could, but it's not necessarily about the sales you make in a year.
Yeah.
How many hands did you shake? How many of the Morrow sales did you set yourself up for? I mean, bring it right into the Spangler world. I don't ever get to sell disaster to somebody. I don't walk up to a house.
Hold on. Hurricane.
let me bust a couple pipes real fast, get the house wet, and we can get some work done, right? I'm not making today's sales. I'm making tomorrow commitments.
What's up, guys? Lift and Love. Lift and Love here. Where did you pull this question from? Why is that? Lift Love. Crochet. We out.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Lifting Love podcast. You are awesome, and today we have a very special guest on, a friend of mine up from Caldwell. I think you're the first person that I've had from the Caldwell area, or at least from the people that I've met in the Caldwell Chamber on the podcast. It's someone who I get to call friend. He's the business development manager for Spangler Restoration, Andrew Ortiz. What's going on, man?
What's going on, big guy? And I'm going to widen your reach out just a little bit more. Work in Caldwell. I'm actually from Wilkes, so you're really stretching out on the map and the reach you've got here.
I was gonna say, I think everybody else I've interviewed so far has been from Catawba.
Yeah. No, you get a Wilkes County boy in here today. A little different perspective here.
Gonna hold on. Spice it up a little bit.
Just a little bit on there, right?
So, we'd like to start off with just asking, who are you and what do you do for the people who may not know you?
Gotcha. Andrew Ortiz, born and raised in Wilkesboro. Went up to Appalachian, had some fun, got a degree, jumped into the work field, done a lot of different stuff, man. Worked in news, worked in retail, worked in outside sales, and found myself in a niche for marketing. Really found that to be a lane that I operate well in. It's a relationships lane. It's what it's all built around. And I learned very quickly in my career that if it wasn't cultivating relationships that could work outside of my profession, then it wasn't something that I wanted to be doing 9 to 5.
So was relationships always something that you just honed in on? I know we've talked a little bit before the pod, but even in something as simple as Foot Locker, where you used to work, it's you're selling a shoe. I also used to work I used to work Journeys. I don't know if you know Journeys.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Competition.
I was a store manager of Journeys for a year, and just building those relationships. Because for me, I had regulars that used to come in all the time, ask for me by name. So when did the relationships part of it start for you in business?
In business, or do you want to go even a little bit deeper into where relationships for personal started? Because for me, it started, back in the school age days, in grade school, right? I loved the idea of walking down the hallway, and whatever hallway I was on, I knew somebody.
Oh, dude, I was the same way.
And it wasn't. And sometimes people would perceive that as, oh, he just wants to be liked by everybody, or oh, he wants to be the popular kid. It was nothing like that. I wanted to have as many connections as I could, because who knew what life brought up? And I really did think that way even in high school. Like, I'm going to be kind to this guy, one, because everybody deserves kindness, but that guy might be my boss one day. And why not develop a personal relationship with somebody who could possibly elevate me later in life, right? So that carried all the way, through high school into college. And I was in a fraternity. I was very social at Appalachian, and my friends would actually joke with me that they would not walk across campus with me because they knew that I was going to be stopped at least 3 or 4 times that somebody wanted to chat and somebody would see what was going on. And that's what I always wanted. I love going to these chamber events and these community events that we go to, and I never enter a room where I don't see a familiar face. And you could point that to a lot of different psychological things and, not wanting to be alone, whatever it is. But I genuinely do love the idea of wherever I go, I've got somebody that I can call a friend. I've got somebody that I can use as a resource or be a resource for.
What's so funny is that I was the same way in high school. So my cousin was on the football team, so I knew all the football players. Yep. I was really big into basketball, so I knew all the basketball players. But then I also had friends who kind of were interchangeable in different groups in high school. So same thing. I was dapping. Every time I went from one class to another, I knew 5 to 10 people by the time I got to my next class.
Merging those groups, you kind of hit on a thing right there of and you said, you had your interchangeable friends, but the thought of being that interchangeable friend, like the basketball group all of a sudden is hanging out with a football group, man, I might be the common denominator that brought these two groups together, right?
Yeah.
And just that sense of community and networking. Somebody told me in college, I won't say somebody, it was my chapter advisor for my fraternity. He'd shared some advice with us, and I took it way too literally as a student. I shouldn't have taken it as literally as a student. But he told us when we were initiated, he said, gentlemen, in your 4 years here at Appalachian, it's not the grades you make, but the hands you shake. And man, if that hasn't stuck with me so much, and not just grades, obviously in school, but it's not necessarily about the sales you make in a year.
Yeah.
How many hands did you shake? How many of tomorrow's sales did you set yourself up for?
How many tomorrow sales did you set yourself up for?
We all
is
get caught
probably the line of this podcast so far. Oh my goodness!
But we all get caught up in what's today.
Yeah.
What can you buy from me today? What can I service you with today? But planting the seeds of this is what I do. Eventually, you're going to need me, or eventually, someone you know and love is going to need me. I mean, bring it right into the Spangler world. I don't ever get to sell disaster to somebody. I don't walk up to a house.
Hurricane.
let me bust a couple pipes real fast, get the house wet, and we can get some work done, right? I'm not making today's sales. I'm making tomorrow commitments, and trying to just stay top of mind with folks, and using my personality to stay top of mind with folks.
That might be one of the greatest sales lines I've ever heard in my life. Because I feel like so many people, and again, I can only speak for myself, but just from what I've seen and what I've heard in the conversations I've been a part of, so many people want to sell you right here, right now. And if you aren't that person, if I'm trying to sell you my social media services, again, I can only speak for me. Most people, if you say no, or I'm not really interested in that, or I can't afford it, whatever the excuse or the line is, it's automatically like next. It's like, how about you develop that relationship? And hey, maybe I can't help you now, but 6 months from now, when you get tired and burnt out of doing all your social media, again, I'm just speaking for myself.
Sure, no, absolutely.
Hey, Len, I know we didn't last time we talked, blah blah blah, but can we do something now? Like, that's what you build. That is such a good line.
And it's, as an entrepreneur, you get to direct that in what you see best for your business.
Yeah.
Where a lot of salespeople fall victim to is the system that they work under, right? And it's not necessarily to say that all salespeople are today's salespeople. They're being told, hey, you don't come back to this office until you've made X number of sales. But that's not always how commerce works. And that's not always how commerce in Western North Carolina, where things move just a little bit slower, right? You're in New York, man, it's signed the dotted line before 2 p.m. because if you don't sign it, somebody else is signing it right behind you. The hustle and bustle that happens, we don't necessarily have that urgency out here, right? Like, all right, man, you didn't work me out a deal for a car. I'll drive around this beater for another couple months until somebody I want to buy a car from pops up, right? Yeah. It's that urgency that exists in sales. It's not necessarily urgent to get you on board and get you to sign that dotted line. It's where can we take the next step in our relationship?
That I just find it so, like, no one has ever said that. I mean, obviously there's people who talk about building relationships, because I think building relationships is super important, not only for like tomorrow sales, but like even like doing this podcast. Like, everybody that I've asked to be on this pod, I haven't gotten a no yet. I mean, I'm sure a no's down the line and people are going to say no, but everybody I've asked has been a very close contact, because I want to start with the people that I know right off the bat, because it's going to make for the best content. It's going to make for the easiest conversations. And then you kind of go from there. But like, just having that network of people that I can be like, hey guys, I'm doing a podcast. You want to be a part of it.
And it goes to, why do you network, and why is networking important to you, right? And like, I think everybody has a different mission behind their networking. For me, of course, I'm networking with business in mind, right? But I'm not creating a relationship with you so when your house floods, you think of Andrew. That's a byproduct of the relationship, right? Like, that's not the intention of the relationship. And the intention of the relationship comes from a quote that I heard a few years back, and I've carried it with me a lot. And it's a pastor where he's talking about fruit trees, right? And he's talking about how the fruit that a tree bears, right? Peach tree doesn't consume peaches. An apple tree doesn't eat apples. The gifts of your talents are not for you. My experiences and my talents aren't for me to keep walking through life and trying to correct the things that I did wrong. It's for me to create relationship with people so I can share my experiences, and so I can prevent those mistakes for other people. My favorite networking opportunities are with people younger than me.
Wow.
Because I can try to shed a light on some of the experiences I've had. And when I say talents, I don't say that with a bunch of vanity. My talents that I've acquired through life, right? They're not for me. They're for everybody I can meet. So if I don't meet as many people as I possibly can, I'm doing my talents an injustice. And that's where a lot of my networking drive comes from. Of course, I do it in the name of my business because they pay my bills and I got a house and a car and I've got all these things because of my business. But for me personally, it's sharing whatever knowledge that I think I have, and maybe it's not knowledge. Some people think it's dumbassery, right? Like some people think I'm full of it, man. Like not everybody sees it as knowledge, but for the people that will receive it as guidance and advice and knowledge, that's why I want the relationship is to, in your time of need, you'll feel comfortable enough to ask me for that.
Yeah.
That's what networking is for me, and everybody networks with a different purpose. Like I said, for me, the business that we get is a byproduct of me. Networking is for Andrew. It's not for Spangler.
Yeah.
It's not for the Caldwell chamber or whatever chamber I work for. It's for me.
Because I think something that's super important, especially in someone in a position like you don't own the business, but you're working for the business, but you're heavily involved. Like if you don't do your job correctly enough, I mean, I'm sure people still reach out to Spangler, but you're able to drive in business because people remember you, people remember the brand on your shirt. That's the important thing, is that people are putting a brand to a name, to a face.
And they're putting a face with the brand is the most important thing. And the way I market with people a lot of the time in the world that we work in, I mean, people are calling us on some of their worst days, right?
Yeah.
If your house is up in flames, your house is underwater, a tree's down in your house, that's a tough day, right?
Yeah.
I never want somebody to call a 1-800. I never want anybody to get a call center when they need somebody. Like, you deserve to get somebody that can, and I say it genuinely, Miss Jones, I'm so sorry you're going through that right now. I'm genuinely sorry that's going on, but I've got 2 guys that are coming to you. We're going to start putting it back together. 6 months from now, this is going to be a memory. You don't get that from a call center, and you don't get that without that personal connection. And you don't get that opportunity without a personal connection from the person that answered that call first.
So what does Spangler offer? Because I know we're talking about home destruction of homes, and people will probably like, okay, there's some type of restoration company, but what do you guys do, and what services do you guys offer?
The best way I can describe it, and I can go through, try and hit the services and the scope of work, by the bullet points, but anything that's too big for a Windex bottle and a rag, you're looking at a mess and you're like, I don't have enough towels in my house to soak all this up. I don't have, this mess is too big for me to get mom and dad over here to help me clean up. That's typically where we come in, right? It can be a natural disaster, where it be hurricane, tornado, things like that. It can be fire. It can be self-inflicted stuff, guys. We do biohazard cleanup. It's my least favorite call that I get, but our multifamily and our apartment, friends that have a tenant that didn't want to be here any longer, we call that, we clean that up. We recently have done a couple of meth lab cleanups. I mean, anything when you're talking about harmful chemicals, you're talking about homeless camp cleanups, where you've got exposed needles and human excretions or whatever you want to call it. I mean, anything that you really don't want your wife or your children cleaning up, that's what we get called for.
I have to go back to the Windex bottle and rag, and I just imagine like a tree fell on someone's house while it's raining, and they go like, that is not going to be enough.
You're not so far off in the region we're in.
Yeah.
And in the region we're in, it is a very do-it-yourself region, right? Like, if my dad, I tell people all the time, if my dad's basement flooded tonight, he will not call Spangler Restoration.
He is grabbing
He's
HVAC.
Uncle Ricky and Uncle Johnny, and I don't have an uncle either one of those guys. They're going to show up with some fans, and they're going to dry it out themselves, right?
And you know what that causes?
Mold. And that's one of the bigger parts of our business, obviously, is that requires a specialty testing. It requires special attention in how you remediate it to prevent mold from coming back, because the reality is, and you're coming into a very special part of your life where you'll be welcoming, your child into the world, and we know how our bodies react to mold. If you're in a room that's got black mold, you might feel you get lightheaded, stomach hurting a little bit, whatever. We don't know how our kids react to that mold. Yeah. So any family that does have small children and they have concerns of mold, that's where we really have to put our thinking hats on.
So, again, I have very limited knowledge in this field. I'm a marketing guy. I do social media. I do content creation. I work with cameras. I don't work with destruction. What separates Spangler from any other restoration? Because there's quite a few. There's obviously your generic ones like Serve Pro and all these. I don't want to, no disrespect to anybody.
No,
Serve Pro,
none.
but like the ones, if you went into a room and said, "Hey, does anyone know a restoration company?" The first one a lot of people would probably know.
It's the commercials.
Yeah, it's all the commercials. Serve
commercials.
Pro. I mean, you could probably name a couple, but that's the first one that came to my mind when we're talking restoration. What makes you guys different than just say a generic one like Serve Pro?
And I'm going to take it from my experience, right? Because I haven't had an experience of working with or even having work done by companies like Serve Pro, ERX, Paul Davis, whoever it is. But for me and in my experience in working with our company, it is our people. Yeah. When I go out to a marketing meeting, and I said it in a lunch today with some insurance agents that I was meeting with, I didn't talk about, the number of jobs we did or how much we've invoiced, or I talked about my guys. I talked about a team of 5 guys that are under 26 years old that are good old boys. They'll sit on the front porch with your clients and chat with them for 30 minutes after the job type people. It's our administrative staff who, instead of punching it into a system and just letting the invoicing roll, you're getting a personalized email. You're getting a phone call, a phone number for somebody you can reach out to. And beyond all of that, and to stick on people, our team really makes Spangler a lot different. Our business development team and the resource that we provide. People, a lot of the times when you're having work done on your house, if it's a week or so and nobody showed up, you don't have anybody to call up at the home office, right? Mm-hmm. Call the number that's on Google. Having people in place that are going to give you a person-to-person connection and give you somebody that you feel like you can trust, because letting people into your home and to do work where your kids are, where your memories are, where it takes a strong level of trust. And for me, what separates us is we're that perfect size company where we appear to be a large company, but in reality, we're pretty small. We're a 4-region company. We're headquartered out of Charlotte. We don't have to answer 15 layers of ticker tape to get something done. My CEO, our decision maker, is one phone call away, and that helps our pace a lot too. So
you report directly to the CEO?
I report directly to.
That's awesome. And so is it like cool to have a job that where like you're not a business owner, but you feel like you have such, and you do, not trying to talk down on the position, but like you have so much influence and impact on the actual success of the business, and you get to deal with those customers in those, like you said, hard situations. Like, how good and rewarding does it feel to be in a position where, like, yes, you're not an entrepreneur per se, but you're in a place where you can affect a business largely.
Mm-hmm. And when the going's good, it's good, and when it's rough, right? Yeah. I do take by the horns being the face of our brand in this area, right? We don't, have big offices out here. We don't have billboards everywhere. Like, I want people, when they think Spangler, to think Andrew, right? Yeah. And in my career, everywhere I've ever worked, and I've said this in interviews and I've said it on video resumes before, I work at a place like my last name's on the door. Yeah. And I've always taken that level of pride. Even at Foot Locker, it might as well have said Andrew Ortiz is Foot Locker, because that's the amount of pride I took in that store, the way it was presented, the way people felt when they walked in, the music that was playing. So to be in a role like I'm in now, where I truly do get to operate as that face, right? Like, I'm in the community, and it comes with a lot of pressure too, right? For sure. There's not really anything to fall back on. If the exposure in Western North Carolina over 2025 drops and the phone calls decrease, there's only one place they can look at, and that's me. It comes with a lot of responsibility, but I do appreciate the trust that's given to us to say, hey, we're going to pay you a very healthy salary to go out and be a brand rep. And I'm not selling anything. Remember that. I'm not going in and selling anything. I'm strictly going in being the face of that company and hoping that people like me enough to think of us in a positive light.
Do you have any aspirations to be an entrepreneur? Like, maybe, obviously, not right now, because it seems like you like what you're doing, but a couple years down the line, and like, what would you picture yourself doing if that was the case?
I've always, and I'm going to use this quote here. I'm a big quote guy, if you can't tell. But
hold on. Massive
quote guy. But somebody told me when I was in college, because I had entrepreneurial goals and still do, and I'll get to that. But people who get into working for themselves or into business for themselves, don't get into it because you don't want to work for anyone else. Because as soon as you're in business for yourself, you work for everyone else. And I quickly learned that in my level of experience and the responsibility that I want to take on, that's greater than what I'm ready to take on right now. I'm not ready to work for everybody in the public. But two, and we talked about this a little bit before we got on, I want something where there's a need. If I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I want to identify a need in a space that I can I can excel in, right? And that might be an invention. That might be a service in an area that's never had that service before. I do have goals for that, but nothing has jumped up so big and broad in my face. It was like, yep, I need to stop what I'm doing and I need to invest in this idea. But if for whatever time I'm here on this earth, I have to think that one idea is going to come to me that's so big that I need to drop everything I'm doing and invest in that idea. So to answer your question, yes, I do have hopes to work for myself and to spearhead something that can benefit people. I don't know what that is yet, but being a dad and being a dog dad, and you see constant gaps in your community and gaps in the world around you where, man, it would be really nice if something like this was here. Eventually one of those is going to jump out at me and I'm going to run with it.
What you brought up your daughter. Mm-hmm. What do you think the biggest lesson was for you becoming a parent? Like, how did that change your life?
Shoo. It's still changing me. First of all.
Well, how old is she again?
She's 3.5. Nice. And when I say still changing me, I mean by the day. And I guess the biggest for me, and it's going to sound really cliche, but it is the patience, right? And it's the patience and the expectations, really setting achievable expectations for my kid. For me, I'm still learning that. Because she's so conversational and she's so smart and she's so, in my mind, ahead of her years that I have to remind myself to slow down a little bit. Yeah. And if anything parenting has provided me with, it is the ability to slow down and appreciate. I tell people all the time when they're getting into parenthood, and I think I've said it to you, don't you dare, and I mean this, don't you dare wish a single thing away. Don't wish dirty diapers away. Don't miss sleeping in the floor with your hand up on their bed, holding their hand so they can fall asleep. Don't miss, the crying in the middle of the night, because all of those are opportunities for memories and connection. And as your kids grow older, they need you less. And she's only 3.5. She needs me more than I can be there for her sometimes. Yeah. But I have, even early in parenthood, recognized that she grows out of all of those things. So appreciating the day. Not looking past, this is a nothing day, I'm going to sit in my room and watch TV, she can sit in her room. No, we're going to spend time together, and we're going to make sure that we make the most of today. Because tomorrow she's 3 years, 6 months, and 24 days old. The next day she's 3 years, 6 months, and 25 days old. I mean, time rolls on. And when you have a kid and you see that progress and you see that growth, we don't see it in ourselves, man. We look in the mirror every single day, and it feels like yesterday. But you'll be sitting at work, you'll be finishing up a pod one day, and this will be a year, 2 years down the road, and iPhone's going to play with you, man. They're going to send you a memory of your son when he was 6 weeks old. And you're going to look at it, and it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks, and that's when you're going to realize how finite time is and how fleeting time is. So if anything, parenting has taught me to slow down and appreciate what's in front of me, even if it's hard. Teaching her how to not scream in public when she's disappointed is hard. It's hard. But I enjoy the opportunity for conversation and connection with her and to teach her those things, because one day she's not going to want to hear what I think about it.
And that it's going to happen a lot quicker than you'd like it to.
It does. I mean, even at 3.5, I mean, there's times that she thinks she knows everything. She doesn't want to hear what Dad has to say. A year and a half ago, that would have never happened. If Dad was talking, it was laser focused.
It was like
things change and they grow and you want them to, but slow down. Slow down.
I think that that's awesome, and I think one of the things I love about you, and it's honestly a lot of things I love about a lot of the people I've had on the podcast so far, is the ability to build those relationships, and with that comes that slowing down. Because sometimes you're not always making a sale, right? You're sitting here not trying to sell anybody anything, because realistically, like, you can't sell me anything, and I can't sell you anything, right? So the cool thing about when you get to that point, it's like you said, slow down. It's like let's build this relationship person to person. I think that's such a cool thing. And I just saw a post the other day, and I meant to text you because I was gonna be like, damn, dude, you're everywhere. But like, it was the Burke County something. You're an ambassador for Burke County too. So like, you're doing all these things. You have a kid, you have the dog, you have, you know, you're building all these relationships all the time. You're at every freaking networking event. You got here late today because you were at a ribbon cutting at another networking event. How the heck do you have time to do all these things?
I am very intentional, and I'm glad that I have achieved the perception that I am everywhere all the time, right? That means I'm doing a good job, because I'm not, right? Like, I am very, very intentional with my time with my daughter. I'm very intentional at 3 o'clock every day when she's done with school. I'm picking her up, and we're spending that time together, even if it's the car ride from picking her up to taking her where she needs to go so I can finish work. But to answer your question of how, I just kind of go where I feel like being, man. Like, and I know that sounds really full of myself, but like, I have been so fortunate to meet so many people and have so many opportunities that there are days when I look at the calendar and there's 5 places I could be.
What does that feel like? Because, I mean, I assume when you first got this role, and I would love to take the time back and go back to when you first got this role, because I found it something interesting we were talking about before. But when you first got this role, I bet you didn't really know people. You kind of just knew the people you knew.
I knew who I knew on a personal level.
But compared to now, like,
Right.
Like if you looked at your contacts a year ago before you got into this role, would you say 40%, 60%? How many people do you think you knew?
If I look at the contact list that I operate in now for my job, I could safely tell you that 40% of that list I didn't think would speak to me at all. That wouldn't give me the time of day, right? Because of whatever competition existed, whatever else. So not only did I not know some of these people, I saw them as forbidden fruit. Like, that's an account way too big for a new guy in restoration that's never worked in it or anything else. But I quickly found out, man, you never get anything you don't ask for. And
Another quote.
if you don't, oh man, I'll fill you up with about 15 more before we're done here. But if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. And just making myself, or putting myself in the office, just that small step of walk in for 10 minutes, create conversation about the Duke Blue Devils or the holidays or whatever's going on, it's opened more doors than to answer your question, than I ever thought would be open for me in this role.
So I don't know how to ask this question, but I'm gonna throw
Candid.
it out there. And you know what? If it lands, if it sticks, it makes sense. We'll go with it. So what was that purpose behind it? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it truly just seems like it was just about relationship building. What was that driving force behind it to be like, I'm going to be the best at this, or I'm going to fail?
You know, it's really funny you ask that, because my first 3 or 4 months in the role, I was kind of just going through the motions. Yeah. Checking those 20 activities, not with really any intention, but just to go back and say, hey, man, I did my 20 visits. Those 20 people know the good news about Spangler. We're good. But the first time I went up to the Boone office and I saw 3 of my guys sitting on the conference room table. And I got to talking to them and realized that they had logged 17, 18 hours worth a week, and this is Thursday. I quickly learned that it wasn't just Andrew and Andrew's family that was depending on that activity and that proactivity. Yeah. I had a whole crew of guys that they don't go out and market. It's not their job to go out to these chamber events and hand out business cards and put our name up in the lights. Their job's to do the work. So my job is to support them and their families and go back to the networking and getting to know my guys. I know 3 of my guys, that have young children. You mean I'm going to sit at home and watch 4 more episodes of whatever show I'm watching rather than go out and route stop places today? I got guys that are depending on me to bring work in for this company. So it wasn't ever, and I like my CEO. We're friends. I want to support his business however I can, but it's not me trying to line his pockets. I'm just trying to make sure we're getting 40 hours a week for our production crew, because those guys are going to look at me if we don't, and they're not ever angry at me, but they would have a right to be Andrew. You mean to tell me you spent 3 days going snowboarding with your daughter instead of bringing in work for us? Yeah. I never liked that sense of responsibility and that spirit of letting someone down. So that's where the motivation really came from. I mean, I always want to be good at what I do. I want to quantify the living that you're providing me. I don't want to just be a paycheck you're cutting. I want to make you that money, then some.
Yeah.
But it was my guys. It was really seeing a group of guys that were dependent on this activity to punch the clock.
It's so awesome, man. So now, speaking of your first couple months there, I would like to go back. How did you even get the job at Spangler?
Really, really long story.
That you just told 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I did. And
I'm sorry, 30 minutes ago.
something like that. And it's still fresh in the mind. Well, I'll go back to how I resubmitted myself into Western North Carolina. And I'll kind of start there. I was working in Foot Locker, living in the Triad when my daughter was born. Life was very loud in telling me that my daughter and I belonged close to my mom and dad in Wilkesboro, at least to provide me with some of that support, so I could focus on building a career, but also have my village. You'll learn very quickly that single parenting is darn near impossible, man. You got to have a village with somebody. So I made the move back to Wilkesboro and commuted my Foot Locker job for a year before I found Carolina West. It was a local wireless solutions provider based out of Wilkes County. And it essentially got me out of the retail bubble, because I know about the retail bubble, and I know that when I was in Foot Locker, the only jobs I was really applying for in Wilkesboro were other retail jobs. I just kind of pigeonholed myself, and I got this opportunity with Carolina West, took it as an opportunity to get back home, and worked there for about a year. At about 3.5 months, I very quickly realized that wasn't my career. It was a placeholder, and that's okay. But my networking at chamber events from that 3.5 month period switched from I'm trying to sell you a phone to I'm trying to figure out what you do. and I learned so quickly. I say it to people all the time. There's 1,001 ways to make a living, and 1,000 of them we don't know anything about. I mean, there's so many ways that people and I made a friend that was working for Spangler at the time and learned about their position. Got a win that they made a pretty decent living, and what I saw was a lot of fun being had. It looked like a really fun position, going to events, golf tournaments, things like that. So I began to ask questions and delve into the restoration world a little bit just to try to see where an opportunity was. And long story short, the person who held my position before vacated it in August of 2023. I was looking for an opportunity out of Carolina West, and when I saw the news post, the Facebook post went out that this person no longer worked for Spangler Restoration, and ultimately there was an opening called Randy Davis. I know you know Randy. Yeah. I knew Randy had done. Shout out to Randy. I'm gonna tell you what. Shout out to Randy for more than one reason, because he also made my video resume that I submitted when I applied for this job. Dude has elevated me more than I can say. But he shared with me the chief marketing officer's number. I called him up the day I saw that the opening had come up. I said, "Hey, my name's so and so. I know you don't know who I am, but I heard you've got a job opening, and I think I'm the guy that can do this job for you." And we met, did an interview, met with the CEO, and I was a Spangler employee within a couple of weeks of that phone call. And there was motivation and drive behind that, right? Yes, I recognize I picked up the phone, I did that, but I'm very candid. I might have just fallen ass backwards into one of my favorite jobs of all time. Really, I mean, just it is the perfect culmination of what I wanted to do and what I'm good at. And I was constantly, in every job I had before, it was one or the other. Is it something I'm good at, or is it something I enjoy? I could never really merge the two. So when I heard that there was a job where you can take people lunch and cultivate relationships, and you take them to ball games and just have a good time, man, just be a bright light in a pretty negative industry. I mean, all told, there's not a lot of positivity to houses burning down or floods happening, but an opportunity to be that for a brand, it's perfect.
Do you feel like sometimes you even work? Because it seems like you're having just so much fun with all you're doing. Going to baseball games, going to mani-pedis apparently, which I'm just saying, I expect one in the future.
We'll get your nails done. Nails done, hair done, everything did for you, buddy.
Does it even feel like work sometimes?
It really doesn't, man. And I say that very quickly, and I'd say that with my boss, with our CEO around. I don't feel like I'm working. I mean, I get out of the house and I just go make conversation with folks.
How did you ever think you'd be in a position with a job like this that you loved genuinely? Like, I mean, obviously you've had other jobs, but like, there's obviously a point in everyone's life where it's like, is this going to be the job for the rest of my life? Or like, did you have that the perspective or the optimism to be like, there's a job out there that I'm going to love one day? Or did you ever find yourself down in the dumps about it?
No, I always knew there had to be a job out there that I would enjoy this much. You know, I was raised, both of my parents were public educators, and I watched both of my parents go through their careers and get so much fulfillment. Like, my dad was an elementary school principal. When I tell you, this guy dressed up as Johnny Appleseed and rock and roll characters and was always just goofing around. Like, I saw a 50-year-old man having fun at work and providing for his family along the way. So I knew it was possible that I could find something. But how long I was going to have to wait to find that, I didn't think I was going to find it at 30 at all. I didn't think that something like this, and I didn't even know, like we talked about earlier, I didn't know that positions like this existed until I'd met the person that held this role before I did. I didn't know that companies paid people to do what I do. It seemed crazy, right? To give somebody a budget to go out and spend money on people.
That you're still paying, even if they don't fully get the business right then and there.
No, in recognizing that a lot of these people that have spent time, money, and effort into the relationship, there's 2 more of me that are doing the same thing for them, right? There's 3 companies total that are courting and treating these people and doing nice things for them. And let me say this too. I don't take you lunch so the next time you get a water loss, you call me. I take you lunch for the opportunity for fellowship, for the opportunity for communication, for the opportunity for us to connect a dot to where I can help you. It's not buying the business. It can very easily look like that. Oh, I took you to get your nails done. So you can think, all right, he spent this much on me. I need to send him this much money. Business, it's not like that. It definitely operates that way. But it's just being provided a platform to like I said, share that fellowship and do something different. It's not always got to be lunch. Like you said, it could be a ball game. You know, we've got Hornets season tickets. We get to send people to Hornets games. All
right, and their next podcast is going to be live from the Hornets Spectrum Center.
I don't know if we're going to get the media rights for that one, buddy. I got to be honest. I'm not an expert in that space, but they might have something about Lenny putting LaMelo up on his page. You know what I mean?
Yo, could you imagine we're just outside of the Spectrum Center doing a podcast? LaMelo comes by like, hey, yo, what y'all chatting about?
I'm thinking, we could kind of get a setup like they had for the backyard sports franchises. You just had the little table outside the arena. You do the play-by-play and just get it out on the air. So,
if you want to know, the Hornets are losing right now.
That's the only thing you need to know, and that's an assumed they are losing.
But that's just so awesome because I honestly didn't know roles like that existed. I mean, that just seems like a bunch of fun, like getting to go meet people. And I think a cool thing about it, too, is like what most places like – you're selling, and you don't really get to like get a lot of stuff. You might get relationships from it in the sales perspective, but like in a position like yours, if you were to leave tomorrow, like, I'm not saying you would do this, but like if you left tomorrow, like those contacts stayed with you. They're gonna reach out eventually. You could reach out to them in any new role that you go to, whether it's entrepreneur, whether it's another role in a different restoration company. I'm not saying you're gonna do that, but I'm just saying like. That's got to feel awesome now. Like at any point, if something goes wrong or God forbid you were to lose your job, it's like you have this backfill of contacts, of people who have great rapport with you, who have great memories of you, great relationships with you. Like what does that feel like has done to your motivation or your self-confidence? What kind of boost did that give you?
Well, people know who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, above all, right? Like they know the person that I am. They know where I come from. They know what motivates me. They know what drives me. So whether that be restoration or whether that be used cars or whether that be kitchen knives or whatever it is that Andrew's peddling, for lack of a better word, to provide for his family, I do believe that the relationship speaks much louder than the service or the product. Yeah. People do business with people they like.
That is literally my favorite quote.
But there's so much truth to it. In whether it be, the manager, you like the restaurant manager, there's a certain waiter at this restaurant that, man, every time we go to this restaurant, Sydney, she takes good care of us. She gets mom extra coffee. People buy from people they like, and people are going to go back to people that they like. So I could be, let me get that one job, get that one check in, and then just sit back and wait for the next one. But it's not about the one job. It's about the 6-7 years that follow and what might fall into line in those 6 or 7 years. So, yeah.
So I only got a couple more questions.
You good?
I appreciate you getting out here late and staying late with me. Family aside, because I feel like obviously having your daughter was probably the best moment of your life.
Mm-hmm.
What so far has been like the proudest moment of your life?
Wow.
Dang, did I stump Andrew?
Man, it takes a lot to get Andrew speechless. I'm telling you, you really got to dig in. The proudest I've ever been, and I'm gonna keep that to myself because I've been proud of other people, but pride in myself. Recently, and it still hasn't hit me yet, Lenny. We've talked about my purchase of my home a little bit, and I still haven't had that moment where I sat in my house and I just, feel that emotion and this is mine. And not to go too deep into it, but to take a look back at my last 5 years and all of the obstacles that have been thrown my way, whether it be financially or whether it be legally or whether it be relationship-wise or anything else, the ability to get through the jobs I didn't like, I think is the biggest thing. To continue to show up to that job that I didn't like every day because I knew that something bigger was behind it. I think that's what I've been most proud of. And at least to use recency bias as that, like, just that perseverance and that refusal to just kind of give in. Mm-hmm. It would have been really easy for me to say, you know what, the market's hard, with real estate and, interest rates are crazy and I should just stay with mom and dad and save money for the next 5 or 6 years. But, proud of myself for taking that leap. Yeah, that's a tough one to answer, Lenny. I got to tell you, really.
I think what I'm going to do is play this clip at Leeds Group just so people can see that you get speechless.
That's the only time that you've ever done that. I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that.
Yeah, I think
that's such a good question, dude. Like, I don't think you understand because it takes, and I hope the camera's not too zoomed in because I think I might be getting a little red in the face a little bit just because, like, man, how deep inward you have to look. And certain people, maybe it's a personality thing. Like, I really have to think about when I was proud of myself. Yeah. And not that I'm not. I'm very proud of but
like tracing it back to a moment, a single moment. Because you're proud of yourself and all that you do and all these things, mm-hmm. but like that's not like a moment. That's like a bunch of moments collectively. It's like, like buying that house, that's a huge, just like pat on the back where it's like, hey, regardless of what you've been through, it's like, hey, we got here. Like there's mm-hmm. light at the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. As I look blindly into that light up there, that was a bad idea. But I like the question because it just makes you reflect, and it's like,
oh, I'm going to be reflecting on it for a long time, buddy. I hope you know that. Like, yeah. I will be thinking about that question for a long time, and I hope that question leads me to multiple scenarios, right? Yeah. And I think more people should ask themselves that question because the biggest trick we play on ourselves is what's next. Yeah. What's next? What can I do to prepare for next instead of embracing what you just accomplished?
So, like, for me, and I mean, you shared yours, I'll share mine, but my proudest moment in life is this. I mean, like, not this specifically, but these past 2 years where it's been like, I made so many excuses. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't have the confidence. If you would have told me 2 years ago what I was able to do in that time period and what I'm doing now, and like, I mean, now we have this whole podcast set up, like this doing content is the proudest I've ever been of myself, period. Obviously it's going to be outdone soon by, having a child and all that stuff, because of my amazing wife who's back there who you can't see. But just doing it because right now I'm working a job. Like I'm working full time. I'm doing this. I'm working with clients. I'm doing all this stuff. And it's crazy. It's hectic. Mm-hmm. This right here, this stuff is the thing I'm going to do the rest of my life. Like you would have to literally kill me to not make content, or not to at least want to make content, to not reach out to people to do podcasts. Like this Like, I found the thing that just gets me going. Like, I don't know what it is.
And
like,
it's not the product for you. I can hear it in your voice. It's not the product. It's the process that you're proud of.
I mean, 100%. Like,
The process, like the devotion that you've put into this and the thought that you put in this. We and you have had conversations about
100%.
getting all of this going and really what your next steps are for you in Caldwell and Catawba County and growing your business. And Lenny, I'll be really honest with you. When I met you, for the first 6 months, I hoped. I hoped for you because I liked you, right? And I still like you. I genuinely, I love you. But I hoped for you. I didn't know that it was there. So I got to sit back and be honest with you for a second that I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that.
Because you didn't move into this area knowing anybody.
Not a single soul.
Nobody. And in 2 years, in a community that is not so quick to open its doors to outsiders, and I'm going to be really serious about that, you have become a community member like that. And not just a community member, but a community fixture. Yeah. You talk about seeing me at events. Lenny, it's the same way, bro. I roll up to events, I expect to see Lenny. And I expect to see people that know Lenny. Yeah. So, yeah, dude, pride in the product. Absolutely. Yeah. Every time you post something, but the process that you've achieved, man.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. And again, going back to like even client work where it's like, I don't have to work with anybody. I know I could do so much and provide so much value to any company I work with. But I love being able to help companies, businesses grow.
And not creating the need along the way.
Exactly.
I think that's really important in what both you and I do, right? Is like, if you're going in there and trying to convince somebody that there's a need that they can't see, it's an uphill battle, right? But if you can have something that satisfies that need, and it's planting seeds, right? Yeah. It's having that conversation, and then 8 months down the line, they're like, man, XYZ companies are doing this, and Lenny was talking about that 8 months ago.
Yeah, and I think for me, like even working with clients, it's like hearing that feedback. Like there was a construction company I worked with, and they're like, oh, people are seeing our post. Hey, man, you're doing a great job. Or last week with my nonprofit client that they were like, we got the numbers and we want to re-sign with you because 10% of our donors this year were new donors and we can trace it back to social media because we didn't have that engagement before on social media. So we're bringing new people in who may have definitely never heard of us before to now donate money to the cause. And sure. I don't have to work with anybody, but I love what I do. And forget about it. This stuff, I love 10 times more than that. So like...
But it goes back to the apple tree, right?
Yeah.
Your talents, and yes, your talents and your experiences are fueling your company and your operation that you're doing here, but you go out and help other companies and you go out and meet with other companies because if you're just keeping that to yourself and gatekeeping your talents and your knowledge,
you're screwed.
Man, I'm not taking that to the grave.
100%.
Ain't worth nothing to me in the grave. I've got to share what I know with as many people as I can, and even if they don't do business with me, if I can leave them with something they'll remember. 100%. Something that might spur a change in their business down the line.
So I only got a couple more questions, and then I'll let you go. I really appreciate your time.
Of course.
If you can go back in time, let's say just out of high school, maybe fresh out of college, maybe even like mid-fraternity, like Andrew, what does that conversation look like, and what advice would you give to your younger self if you go back in time?
It's advice that I was given all of those times.
I sense another quote coming.
And it's a really simple. Don't take things so personally. And when I was 18, 19 years old, anything that happened, and it wasn't always happened to me, anything that just happened, I would find a way how that was because of something I had done. Or so every no was because of a shortcoming that I wasn't aware of, that everybody else in the world could see, but Andrew couldn't see it. And I ate myself up with what's wrong with me. Why am I not being accepted here? Why am I not being accepted there? When in reality, it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the group that I was wanting to be accepted in, or it had to do with the job that I wanted. It was never a reflection. Anything that happens to you in life is not a reflection of who you are. And I wore that so hard that, if I'm trying to think of an example, a customer came in and I showed them 3 or 4 different baseball bats and they didn't like any of those bats. Man, what did I do wrong as a salesman? What could I have said to them that would have made him buy that bat It got shit to do with Andrew and what he said. He didn't like the 4 bats.
Yeah.
It's that's all it was. So if I could tell my young self anything, it's don't take everything so personal. Some things just are.
I love that. And then the last question before I get into your social media and the company's social media and how people can find out if they want to do business or even connect with you and maybe get lunch and see what services you offer and how you guys could help. Maybe if there's someone watching this, maybe they're burnt out. Maybe they're where you were 5 years ago when you didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You didn't know what could have been possible, or that Foot Locker you where it was like, I really don't know what's next, or that Carolina West Wireless you where it was like, I hate this and I need to figure something out, or just you who was like super confident and beyond the moon that you found this awesome gig that you just happened to land upon. What's the best piece of advice you can give to somebody watching this right now?
You never get anything you don't ask for. And I'm just going to say it again. Imposter syndrome is so real in our generation. And I felt it so much when I was in retail, right? Like, how could a Foot Locker employee, a guy who puts shoes on toddlers, possibly go out and market for a restoration company that does X millions of dollars a year, right? Like, I've only done this for so long. This is what I'm good at. This is where I need to be. If I could give, and I tell my friends that all the time, like the ones that are looking for a new job or looking for a new opportunity, man, go ask somebody. You see a dude at a restaurant that's got 10 people around him and you see him raise his hand and say, hey, check's on me. I've got everybody's food tonight. Walk up to that dude and ask him what he does for a living. Ask questions, like be curious and don't limit yourself based on what you think you're capable of. Because if you limit yourself to what people are allowing you to do in your day-to-day role now, that's all you're ever going to do. But if you look outside and you'll look at, well, yes, I'm working at Foot Locker and boss has got me walking around straightening the shoes today. Dude, you're gaining visual merchandising experience.
So try to find the good in everything.
In where you are, right? Like try and find, because there was growth. What I learned in Foot Locker, I apply. There are several lessons I learned in Foot Locker that I apply to Spangler. Everything is intentional. Everything serves a purpose. So even though you hate that job that you're in right now, it is training you to do things that is going to make you better at the job you want. You might not like what you're being asked to do right now, but if you're making yourself uncomfortable and you're branching out and you're learning new skills, you're preparing yourself for what's next. And that in retail is a perfect example of that. I say that in retail, you're everything. You're an accountant, you're inventory, you're marketing, you're doing all those things when you're running a store in a mall. So there are 6-figure positions that do visual merchandising. There's 6-figure positions that do inventory management. So understanding that everything serves a purpose, and the lessons you're learning today are going to play in your role down the road. You just don't see it yet.
And then the absolute last thing for you, and gosh, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know where this podcast was gonna go. I didn't know. Like, I just figured we would just be yapping because that's what we do every time.
That's basically what we've been doing.
But it was so informational. And I think it's just so, I just love podcasting. I just think it's so cool to be able to sit down and have a conversation, even though like we talk on a frequent basis. I see you when you come to Leeds once a week.
When I show, yeah, it's early, man.
It's so early, but it's just so cool to sit down and just talk to you. So first off, I appreciate your time so much. Really grateful I get to call you friend.
Thank you for the platform, man. I really do appreciate it.
Like I said, thank you. And where can people find Spangler? I don't know if you want to put your own social media out. I know you do a little bit of promoting and for other local businesses, but where can people find Spangler? How can they get in contact with you to potentially sit down for a lunch, maybe go to a ball game, a Hornets game, maybe get a mani-pedi? I mean, who knows?
Listen, and I'll say this: if you're at this point in the pod and you're looking for a phone number to call Spangler, you probably should have Googled it before. But I'll start with the phone number. We are 1-866-26-FLOOD. Any type of emergency, I tell everybody I'd call 911 first if it's that big of an emergency. But callspangler.com is the URL where you're going to find our website. You're going to find all of the services that we offer. You'll find customer testimonials. You'll find employee profiles. that's going to be your best basis, to find things if you don't want to pick up the phone. But I'm going to tell you, and I'm not going to shout my cell phone number out onto this. But if you've got questions about Spangler, the best thing to do is to ask somebody who works there. Call me and ask me. Call my project manager, Tyler. If you got questions about the company, I said it earlier in the podcast, we're a personal company. We want face-to-face interactions. So, yeah, if you got questions, I'm not going to tell you to Google it. Call me. I'll answer.
So, shout out to Spangler Restoration. Thank you, Andrew, for your time.
Thank you.
And this was another Lifting Love podcast. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to wherever you get your podcast. And most importantly, lift love, crochet. Till next time, we out.